Hello everyone, my name is Rebecca, and in this week's video, I'm learning something new. This year I've been dabbling with making designs for my online shop, and I have to say I'm pretty proud of the ones I've made so far. Sometimes when I'm trying to make new products, I'll think, this item would look really cute with a pattern on it. And eventually I was like, why don't I try to make a pattern? So I jump onto YouTube and start watching tutorials on pattern making. This tutorial specifically really helped me, even though it is for Procreate. I'm using Clip Studio Paint, and even though I'm using a different software, I was able to apply the same steps. That being said, we do run into some issues that I'll talk about later. For my pattern, I want it to be a half drop pattern, so instead of repeating like this, it will repeat like this. Half drop patterns can feel less repetitive, and I like the idea of that. Before jumping into drawing the pattern, we're going to be doing some setup. It's a little boring and technical, but bear with me. To start the process of making the half drop pattern, I need to prepare my canvas. This one is 3000 by 3000 pixels. Next, I need to break my canvas up into multiple sections. First in halves and then into quarters. This will be important for making our pattern repeat later. To help me with this, I'm going to turn on the grid, then I go to the grid settings and make the grid as large as I can. This is mostly to help me see where the center point of the canvas is. Next, I make a new canvas that has its width set to half of my current canvas, so 1500 pixels. I fill this canvas with a color and then copy this color over to my main canvas. Now I have a section that is perfectly half of the canvas. I always have a hard time breaking up the canvas into half perfectly, and I have found this is the easiest option to do that. I do the same for the right side. I just need to move the color over and make sure it lines up exactly with my other area. We need things to be pixel perfect. Next, to break up the canvas into quarters, I go to my second canvas and change the height to be 1500 pixels. So once again, half the height of my main canvas. Now we have a square that is a quarter of the size of the original canvas. I fill the square and copy the square over. As we can see, it is a quarter of the canvas. I then copy over squares and move them until I get something like this. Now that the canvas is perfectly sectioned into quarters and halves, I'm going to make some selection layers. Selection layers are basically a way to save a selection to use for later. So I select a square and then go to selection and then convert to selection layer. This green square appears showing us where the selection is. And now I can double click this square to make the selection. I repeat this for all of the other sections. Now I can easily select the different areas whenever I need to. Okay, now our canvas is prepped for the pattern and we can move on to the fun part, drawing the stuff for the pattern. I started by sketching out different element ideas I could possibly use in the pattern. I wanted a design that included my fairy character Pariah, along with her animal friend Mr. Froggy, and some nature elements like flowers and mushrooms. Now that I had a direction for the pattern, I started to draw the different elements. I'm drawing all of the elements individually, so it's easier for me to place them and play around with the pattern design later. For the designs, I make two variations, so I make two different daisies and two different cosmos. I am currently sketching out the designs, and then once they are all sketched out, I will outline and color them. Fun fact, I actually started working on this pattern a few months ago, back when I was still pregnant. But I wasn't able to finish it because drawing all the different elements took a lot longer than I thought it would. And then eventually I had the baby, and I was on maternity leave and all of that. So yeah, it does make sense that drawing the different elements takes a good amount of time. I'm making a bunch of different drawings that will be put together, but for some reason in my brain I was expecting it to not take too long. Since I do draw Pariah and her world with a more sketchy and watercolor-like style, I wanted these drawings to also have that style. So I used a pencil brush for the line work and my watercolor brush for the coloring. However, I did make things a bit neater than I usually do, since I felt like that'd be better for printing and clarity. Something I did kind of realize while working on these was that I should really be trying to practice drawing plants more often. If I want to actually make a whole comic story about fairies and the plants they grow, I have to be able to draw them. And it's not that I can't draw them, but I'm definitely slow and it doesn't come super naturally or quickly. I'm not comfortable with drawing them yet, and I need to get more comfortable. I also want to get more comfortable with drawing Mr. Froggy. Right now, I feel like I can only draw him one way, but if he's going to be in the story, I need to be able to draw him in many different poses and views. And right now, I can't really do that. So that's something I'll have to work on. Anyways, after I finished drawing all the elements, I wanted to save them to my material library to make designing the pattern easier. To do this, I make a layer that has the drawing all in one layer, and I have this layer selected. Next, I go to Edit, Register Material, and then Image. From here, I name the material, choose a folder to save it to, and check mark that it can be scaled up and down. Now I can drag in my drawing as much as I want. Yay! I repeat this for all of the other drawings, but you don't need to watch that since it's really boring. Okay, now we can go back to our canvas that we made at the start of the video to place things together for our pattern. I start by placing Pariah since she is the main element I want to work the design around. I then spend time dragging in other drawings and playing around with their position. As I'm doing this, I'm trying to find elements that fit well together. I'm thinking about balancing the design and finding a good flow. After a bit of fiddling around, I ended up with this, and it's here that I noticed that I did not draw enough things to fill the space with a good amount of variety. In my head, I was thinking I would place more flowers, but I'm realizing that I'm kind of making the main tile for the pattern, and this tile will repeat. So I don't really need to place multiple of the same item within this tile, if that makes sense. I'm not an expert and I'm trying my best to explain, but I started to draw things directly into the canvas so that we could have some more interesting elements in the pattern. For this spot, I felt like a mushroom would work well. One thing that I was a bit stumped on was what color to make the mushroom. For the most part, my design was working with greens, yellows, and pinks. I wanted to keep the color amount low to help the design feel cohesive and not too chaotic. However, I felt like I needed another color, and after looking at a color wheel for a bit, I decided with a light purple because I felt like it could fit in nicely, so I made the mushroom purple. Another item I drew in was a book, since Pariah likes to read books and she's holding one. I used the 3D primitive cube to help me draw the book. I wanted to draw the book tilted so we could see the different edges, and the 3D model helped me do that more quickly and accurately. And I made it purple as well to kind of balance with the mushroom. I don't want the mushroom to be the only purple element. I then added a taller mushroom here and made a copy of the book that is a different color and placed it here. I felt like I needed another yellow item, and after some thinking, I decided on a butterfly. Honestly, a lot of this pattern process was me just sitting and trying to think of another element to include, but you don't get to watch that part. And this is when I learned that I don't know how to draw butterfly wings. I had to look up a reference, but I quite like how the butterfly turned out. I really like how I colored the wings and the pattern. I made a second butterfly that is in side view by editing the first one a good amount. As I often say with time-consuming art projects, reduce, reuse, recycle. Don't feel bad about saving time by reusing stuff. For the last elements, I drew a 4-leaf clover and a second book design. And this was feeling good to me, so I was now ready to start the process of making this a seamless repeating design. I was nervous for this part because it is kind of confusing, but I just kept referring back to the video that I was watching, and it helped a lot. I wouldn't have been able to do this without the YouTube video. So to make this a repeating half drop pattern, we will have 2 rounds of transitions. For this first round, I need to flip the upper left corner horizontally and vertically. I then also flip the lower left corner horizontally and vertically. And lastly, I flip the entire right side horizontally and vertically. As you can see, we now have these empty spots in the design that we need to fill in. So like before, I will drag in elements and also draw in some new ones. Like I drew the simple flower. However, as I was working on it, I noticed that when I was using the paint bucket tool, that it didn't want to fill these petals all the way. And when I zoomed in, I found that there was a line of pixels. I ignore them for now, but they do become a big problem later. I decided to just continue the process of filling in the empty areas, mostly by dragging in or editing pre-existing items. However, I did draw a new one being this necklace. The necklace is a part of Pariah's story. This is actually the first time I've drawn it, so I don't know if it will 100% look like this, but I needed something really small to fill this area, and the necklace worked well. Also, I added leaves to the flowers to help it fit in a little bit better. Okay, now that the empty spots are filled, we can do the second transition. This time I flip the upper and lower right corners horizontally and vertically, and flip the entire left side horizontally and vertically. So basically the opposite of what I did the first time. And it is here that I notice how much of a problem that line of pixels from earlier is. Because of the pixels, my pattern has a hairline of random pixels in it that run all the way through it. It's really small, but it's definitely something I don't want in the pattern. At first I assumed that my selection must be a little bit off. However, after checking them over several times, I found that they were not off at all. So I wasn't sure what was happening. In the YouTube video I was using as a guide, I did see it recommended to add some color to the corners to help aid the selection. But this didn't make a difference for me. I still ended up with a thin line of pixels. After a lot of time of trying to figure out what I was doing wrong, I noticed that it wasn't something I was doing. It was something that Clip Studio Paint was doing. For some reason when I enable the selection, it makes the pixels along the edges slightly transparent, even if I don't move the design at all. Also, when I do move the design, I would end up with pixels that would not move for some reason. And this is what is becoming the random line of pixels. It's these pixels that don't get moved. Also, I did try changing the interpolation method, and that did not help at all. So since this way of breaking up my pattern into pieces wasn't working, I decided I would just select my entire design, flip it horizontally and vertically, and place it manually. I was nervous to do this because if I'm off by even a pixel, it'll throw off the whole design. But I just made sure that my design center point was aligned perfectly with either the corners or the edges of my canvas, depending on the area. I was worried that for the second round of selections I would end up with the transparent pixels along the edges, but thankfully I did not, and it all worked perfectly. Yay! I spent like 2 hours trying to figure out the pixel problem, so I was very happy when I found a solution. I'm not totally sure why I was getting those troublesome pixels, but for some reason if I do things like this it works, so I'll take it. And now I just need to fill in this last empty area with stuff, and we are almost done. Yay! I used the necklace, made a white variant of this flower design, and added in another book. The books worked really well for filling in the thinner areas. Now that all the empty areas are filled, we can make the final pattern that is aligned. If we tried to repeat this pattern, it would not line up, so we need to make it line up. I merge all of the elements onto one layer. I then make 5 copies to scale down. I put the entire design in the upper left corner and the lower left corner. Once again, I need to be very precise with the placement. For the right side, I place the entire pattern in the middle of the canvas, and then I fill in the top and bottom gaps with more of the pattern. I place things like this because the pattern is a half drop pattern. The pattern on the right needs to drop down by half of the design. I put all of this on one layer again and register it as a material. I make sure to have tiling checked so that Clip Studio Paint tiles the pattern. Okay, so now it's time to see the pattern. And it works! Yay! It's all aligned and there's no transparent pixels. I think it turned out so cute. That being said, I do want to make some slight adjustments. I don't like the placement of the second Mr. Froggy, so I swap him out for more white flowers. I wanted to add some more of the white flowers because they are light in value. They kind of let the pattern breathe a bit. And now it's officially done. Now that I had the pattern, I made a super high resolution image with the pattern all over it and put it onto some items from my online shop. I decided to go with a notebook, tote bag, mouse pad, and I made a sticker sheet as well. You can get these all in my merch store, and there's a link in the description. I did order product samples for all of these, but they have not arrived yet. When they do, I'll update the website and my social media with pictures of them. Oh, I also made a wallpaper pack that has different versions that can be used for many different devices. My favorite version is the pastel one. It makes the design on the lighter side so it doesn't feel like it's overwhelming your screen. So yeah, that was my journey of learning how to make a repeating half drop pattern. I hope me sharing this experience is a bit helpful if you want to do this as well. Before we end, I want to say a super big thank you to my wonderful YouTube members and Patreon patrons for their support. It means so much to me. And thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next week in my next video. Bye! So baby is awake now, and he is with me, but he's pretty chill at the moment. You might hear him, you might not. And we're going to continue recording this audio because I need to get it done. Oh, hi, Pina. You talking? So basically the opposite of what I did the first time, and it is here that I notice how much of a problem that... Oh, hi! You got us to say today? And it is here that I notice how much of a problem that line of pixels from earlier was. This isn't gonna work. Yeah, I thought maybe I could record audio with him, but he's too noisy. He's so noisy, honey. Oh yeah, you got lots to say, honey.